comes to conflict and atrocity-related sexual violence, the most important institution in international law is what they call International Criminal Court. This court was created by the Rome Statute. The Rome Statute. It was created following events that happened earlier on during the Second World War. And the people who committed atrocities during that war, it was found necessary that justice is done to the victims. So, a number of tribunals were created to handle such people. So after those people had been tried at Nuremberg and all those other places, the question was, have we stopped seeing such kinds of people? Have we stopped seeing people who motivate others to go and cause harm on another group of people? So there was need, therefore, to have a permanent court to handle people of that nature. So that is how the Rome Statute came about and the International Criminal Court. So under the statute which creates the International Criminal Court, there is 4 offenses. There are 4 offenses which can be committed at that level. There's what we call a war crime. Then there's crime against humanity. Then the third crime is genocide. And then the fourth one is what they call aggression. So if you look at those crimes, you find that in their definition, sexual violence could constitute any of those. So sexual violence can be a war crime. Sexual violence can be a crime against humanity. Sexual violence can be a crime under genocide. So, when it comes to the definition of and understanding of sexual violence at that level, the standards are a bit different, and the definition is a bit different from maybe at a national level. So therefore, the Rome Statute had to define some of these sexual offenses. So how the Rome Statute defines these sexual offenses is that it tends to eliminate the gender aspect. Yeah? So when the Rome Statute talks of crimes like rape, forced nudity, forced pregnancy, sex slavery, and so on, it does not give it a gender perspective, which is different from some of the national laws we have. Like maybe in Uganda, if you look at our penal code, section 110, definition of rape, it tends to have a gender connotation. It talks of unlawful carnal knowledge of a woman or girl. So it means it is saying the victim can only be a woman or a girl. However, for purposes of the Rome Statute under international law, things are a bit different. The Rome Statute does not create a distinction. Yeah? It simply talks of a person. Is the victim a person? Person can be male or female, or whatever description you want to give it. Yeah? So there must be a physical invasion of a sexual nature committed on a person under circumstances which are coercive. So from that, the definition of sexual violence needs to be looked at in context with other human rights provisions. For example, sexual violence can be used as a tool for torture. Yeah? So we have a law like United Nations Convention Against Torture, which forbids torture, cruel, inhuman, and degrading treatment. So it means if sexual violence is used as a tool of torture, as a tool of imposing degrading treatment on a person, It means now it is not just a war crime, but it also constitutes an act of torture. So that is how the law treats sexual violence at the international level. Then human rights, International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights, also forbids torture. That is a law which lays down human rights, especially the rights which they call civil and political. But now, if that law says that no person shall be subjected to torture, cruel, inhuman, degrading treatment, it means if sexual violence is used as a tool of achieving any of that, it would constitute an act of torture. So, in our legislation, there seems to be a shift towards the Rome Statute interpretation of rape and sexual violence. Some countries have gone ahead, others are still lagging behind and are trying to catch up. So there are some good examples worldwide of countries which are amending their laws to try and make sexual violence gender neutral, in their domestic legislation. We have a very good example from our neighbors in Kenya. If you look at the Kenyan definition of an offense like rape, you find it is very comprehensive and gender neutral. They say any person. They use the word person. Then the perpetrator. The perpetrator. If you read the Ugandan Penal Code, section 110, it gives the impression that it is only the man who can be a perpetrator. Yeah? But the Kenyan law says any person, which means both men and women can be either victims or perpetrators. And then if you look at how the Kenyan law defines the punishment, it's also very interesting. It says, person found guilty, minimum punishment is 10 years, but can be commuted to life imprisonment. Which means if you're convicted, it means the minimum punishment you expect is 10 years. But in Uganda, we simply say the punishment for rape is death. But that is the maximum punishment. So you'd find someone convicted of rape and maybe given 2 years, given 3 years. It creates a situation of vagueness in the law. It allows some bit of uncertainty. But in Kenya, they are giving you a range between 10 years and life imprisonment. Another example is South Africa. Under the South African law, the definition of rape is also gender neutral. However, the limitation with South Africa is that it seems to say that only a male can be a perpetrator. But the victim can be a male or a female. Then the United Kingdom, Sexual Offences Act of the United Kingdom, is also gender neutral when it comes to definition of some of these offenses, like rape. So therefore, as a way forward, what could we be looking at to try and address these issues? Because in reality, both men and women, boys and girls, can be victims of sexual violence. But the challenge is that when it comes to men, they tend to have some challenges like social stereotypes. When a man opens up about sexual violence, there is a way society looks at that person. They judge the person. So you find men fear to come out. Then secondly, the systems. When you go and when a man goes to police to report a case that they have been sexually assaulted, they may end up being the first person they may end up getting charged themselves. We have a perception that a man who reports anything of a sexual nature maybe is gay, maybe they are immoral. So there is that perception. Yeah? And then the systems, the response systems, the NGOs, the facilities which are available, if you look at them, they seem to be tailored more towards addressing or attending to victims who are female. So because of such challenges, you find that getting justice for the men or the boys who are victims of sexual violence is quite challenging. So therefore, there are some good practices or recommendations which I think we can borrow. One of them is the need for legislative reform. We need to amend some of our laws to provide for gender-neutral definitions of sexual offenses. Then, the need for trainings and sensitization. Because there's a lot of perception that for a man who reports a sexual offense, maybe they are having some problems themselves. So it means we need to sensitize the communities we come from. We need to have trainings for the stakeholders to appreciate the nature of sexual offenses against men and boys. Yeah? Then, we also need to engage in efforts of advocacy. Advocacy. So that we can encourage the men who are suffering in silence to come out and speak about these issues. The systems we have in place, can they accommodate both types of gender? Do we have medical facilities which could attend to a male survivor of sexual violence? Or our systems are only in place to cater for the female survivors? The people we train, our doctors, are they only trained to attend to victims who are female? Maybe we need to look into that also. Then also, policy considerations. Do we have policies in place to cater for potential victims of sexual violence from both gender? If you look at your sexual harassment policies in your institutions, what kind of language do they use? Is the language gender neutral? Or do they protect a male employee who is a victim of sexual violence? So those are some of the issues we need to look into. Thank you very much.